SSA 8240, Authorization for the Social Security Administration to obtain wage and employment information from payroll data providers. That's a pretty long title for a pretty straightforward Social Security form. So there's not a lot of information on the internet about this. There's not too much information in the Social Security Program Operations Manual system that's available online to anyone. So we'll go through how to complete this form. That's pretty straightforward, and I won't give advice on why you should or should not complete this form, but we'll kind of go over a couple of things that the Social Security Administration states. We'll cover some of the disclosures that you should be aware of, and we'll go from there. So this is a 3-page form. Most of the information you need to be concerned about is on the first 2 pages. Basically, the 3rd page contains the Privacy Act statement and then Paperwork Reduction Act. So according to this, it takes about 6 minutes to complete this form. There's standard language about gathering facts and reading the instructions. Realistically, all you need to do is put in certain information, state whether or not you're giving the Social Security Administration permission to access payroll information from payroll data providers. We'll go over that. So at the very top of the form, we've completed this. Let's just imagine that our hero, John Doe, it's his information that will be obtained. However, his ex-wife, Jane Doe, is requesting this, and she is doing it for a very specific reason, which we'll get into in a moment. So you'll enter the individual and their Social Security number. If you are not the individual, that is, if you are the individual requesting this information, but it's not based on your record, you would complete fields 3 and 4 with your information. So in this case, Jane Q. Doe entered her name and Social Security number, and we'll circle back to section 5 in just a moment. Under the signature, it specifically states if it's not signed by the individual whose information will be obtained, then what authority do you have to sign for this? So she can either sign as that person's guardian, or she could sign as the parent of a minor whose information would be obtained. So she can print the name of the parent and guardian here and put the mailing address, city, state, and zip code. So let's go back to part 5, because we'll spend a decent amount of time here really kind of breaking down what it is that you understand when you sign the form. So we'll go through it paragraph by paragraph, and we'll just kind of break this down into plain language. So the Social Security Administration will use my authorization to obtain wage and employment information from payroll data providers. There's a definition of what constitutes a payroll provider, and they may obtain wage and employment information through either automated means, and there's a part of the Social Security Act that allows them to do that, or through non-automated information exchanges. So either way is acceptable once you give permission. In paragraph 2, it says that if the SSA obtains payroll information based on this authorization, it can use the records for purposes other than for which the program covers. So they can use your records to decide if you get benefits under both SSDI and SSI programs, even if the authorization is limited to one program. So that can work 2 ways. Most people are probably concerned about if they're receiving one set of benefits and they find out that the Social Security Administration deems them to be ineligible or eligible for benefits at a lower level, they're worried about, and probably rightfully so, about the SSA lowering their benefit amount, because this is saying that they can do that. On the flip side, they can also proactively go in, and if you're applying for disability insurance and they find out that you're also eligible for supplemental security income, then they can also use it that way. So this is probably set up to make sure that people aren't scamming the system, but unfortunately there are probably also a lot of people that are like Ernest who do believe that they're eligible, who might not be eligible for some reason, and they get squeezed out of this. So this is probably the biggest concern to have, and it's a legitimate concern. We'll go through this form in a little bit more depth, and we'll kind of uncover some of the things that might make you realize that it's not necessarily a bad thing to complete this form, even if you think that your benefits might lower or something might happen to them. So in the third paragraph, basically talks about the SSA. They will request authorization. They request authorization for each program, SSDI and SSI, once. So if you grant authorization, that authorization stays in place even for different purposes. So if you obtain payroll records, if they obtain payroll records about you for claims associated with the ones that you file, they can go ahead and keep that authorization for future claims. So if you revoke your authorization, the SSA will not use the information to keep going after payroll providers to get new information. However, it does state in the operations manual that they reserve the right to use any information that they previously obtained with an authorization. So again, this is probably not something for most people to worry about too much if they've been earnest in their dealings with the Social Security Administration, if they have not been doing fraudulent things. So this fourth paragraph talks about certain penalties that you might be subject to for under different parts of the Social Security Act. So when I reviewed these, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not giving legal advice, but I can read. So what I read in section 1129A is that it appears to be penalties that might apply for submitting false or fraudulent information. And they're civil penalties, at least under this statute. They appear to be, they don't appear to have any criminal penalties attached to them, but it does say for a first offense, the Social Security Administration could withhold benefits for up to 6 months, a second offense for 12 months, third and subsequent events for 2 years. Now this is only for like knowingly submitting false or fraudulent information. If there's like a mistake, if there's good cause, I mean there are a lot of clauses in there that say basically that the intention is to focus on people that are trying to commit fraudulent acts and not people that are making mistakes. And then in section 1631E2, that talks about certain reporting criteria for when you have disability insurance or SSI, certain reportable events that each beneficiary is required to notify the Social Security Administration about. Things like changes in status, changes in employment, changes in medical status. There are a long list of these things, and if you don't report those, or if you don't report those in a timely manner, then the Social Security Administration can withhold certain amounts, and I think it's like $25 for a first offense, $50 for a second, and then $100 for subsequent offenses. And again, this is not something that would happen, to someone that made an omission or had good cause for a delay. It would be something that would be imposed on someone where there's a determination that that person was trying to pull one over on the government. So again, that's what I read. This is not legal advice. It's just saying that if you sign this form and you have this form on record as an authorization, then you're not subject to those penalties, because the Social Security Administration can go out and get your employment information whenever they want. So they can tell if you're double dipping and getting paid while you're still collecting disability or SSI benefits, and might not be eligible. They can tell that. So let's see, next paragraph talks about if your employer does not report information, then you are responsible for making sure that that information is reported accurately to the Social Security Administration. Generally speaking, that happens when you file your tax return and you're filing things like your 1040 that reports your wage income from the W-2. Usually that happens. To my knowledge, there's not anything extra special that someone needs to do to report that information to the Social Security Administration. If the Social Security Administration paid me too much in benefits, I might have to pay them back. You do have recourse if they determine that there's an overpayment. You can either request a waiver of that overpayment collection, or you can request a change in how fast they recoup that money. And there are two different tax or Social Security forms. Form SSA 632BK and 634BK are the forms that you would use to request either a waiver of the overpayment or a change in how quickly they recover that money. So we'll put links to those two in the show notes in case you have concerns about that. If your employer does not report, then you have to report your wage and employment information. And at the last, you're specifically authorized. Not only are you authorizing the SSA to request that information, you're authorizing payroll data providers to disclose the information to the SSA. So you're giving permission to both the SSA as well as any payroll data providers that are sitting on your information. That's all that those things are saying. So it doesn't appear, at least I can't see too many scenarios in which someone that's earnest and trying to do the right thing should be threatened or scared or intimidated about completing this form. The caveat, the only thing that I've seen on the website is that this is a voluntary form. You don't have to submit this form, but then if you don't submit this form, it might represent a change in how they adjudicate your case. For example, if there's information that they need that they can't get, they'll try other methods. But if they can't get information and that information is directly linked to your benefits, then you might end up shorting yourself. Or you might end up, if you're not authorizing information, they might not uncover if you're eligible for a program that you didn't know about. So there is kind of a downside about not completing this form, but it is stressed that this form is completely voluntary and it's not mandatory at all. So in 5A, you're going to basically indicate in 5B and 5C whether or not you authorize the Social Security Administration to obtain wage and employment information first for SSDI purposes, and again, your authorization remains in effect until they make an adverse decision that's final and you don't have any other claims or appeals pending. Your entitlement ends and there's no other claims or appeals pending, or you revoke your authorization in writing. Now, I would probably err on the side of caution and just say, don't assume anything. If you want your authorization, if you want to revoke it, you shouldn't wait for it to wear out. You should probably just be proactive and revoke it. And you can contact the Social Security Administration. They actually have procedures on how to revoke it or how to document it if you call them, if you went to an office, or if you revoked it in writing. So you could probably start with your local office or calling the 800 number to determine how best to revoke your authorization. Under the SSI, it's the same verbiage as for the SSDI. The only difference really is that there's an extra stipulation where they might need to process your benefits on behalf of another person, just like in this case where Jane Doe is presumably filing for SSI benefits for, let's just say, her daughter. That if John's eligible, then her daughter might be eligible for SSI benefits based on John's earnings. So there's an additional caveat there, but again, if you want to revoke your authorization, you should probably be proactive in doing it. And then in Section 6, you're simply signing and dating the form. If you're not the original applicant, then you need to complete the information below as I outlined earlier. When you're signing, make sure you sign in blue or black ink. Specifically states blue or black ink. And then finally, in Section 7, as with most Social Security forms, witnesses aren't required except in the instance where the applicant signs using a mark instead of a legal signature. So apparently the Social Security Administration still recognizes X as a mark, as a legal signature, as long as there are two witnesses that sign the form stating that they know the person or they are satisfied that they've ascertained that person's identity. So if box 6 contains an X or a mark instead of an actual signature, then you would need to have two witnesses sign and enter their address here. So that's all we have with this form. I mean, it's fairly straightforward form to walk through, but we spent most of the time kind of covering on some of the fine print that you should be aware of before you go ahead and make that, give that permission. Now, there's a lot of information on the Privacy Act statement that this is a standard verbiage that appears on pretty much every Social Security form. So the Social Security Administration can share your information with employers, either current or former, if they are trying to reconstruct your earnings record. And again, this is probably a good thing. It doesn't mean that they can just do whatever they want with your current or former employer. But for the purpose of either correcting earnings records or trying to reconstruct lost records for Social Security purposes, that's a good thing. And then they also have contractors and that administer their programs. Contractors are third parties that might need access to that information just to help maintain and manage those programs. And then other federal agencies. So, this gets reported. There's a lot of information that gets shared between the Social Security Administration and the Treasury Department, the IRS. So there are a lot of different things that, for example, if you're collecting Social Security, but you're behind on child support, there is a way that the Treasury Department can, garnish money from other sources, whether it's Social Security benefits or tax return refunds. They're allowed to do it in certain ways. There are manners that they can do that. They can't just do it willy-nilly, and they can't just take everything at one time. But there are certain ways that the federal government can do this. And again, most people don't have to worry about it. It is the people that either, are trying to commit bad things or misrepresenting, certain information, or sometimes, things do happen with, people that just honestly believe that they might be entitled to something that the government doesn't think that they are. So, but again, use of this form is voluntary. It's not mandatory, but then it also might limit your ability to get benefits. It might limit the amount of your benefits. It might limit, or it might, make the application process longer. So there is a trade-off. If you want to know more about this form, we write in pretty good detail in an article that you can find on our website. Simply go to teachmepersonalfinance.com, type in form SSA 8240, and you'll see our article. We'll also put a link in the show notes, as well as links to some of the other forms that I mentioned and other articles that might be helpful. So if you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. And if you like our YouTube tutorials, please check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel. So if you have any questions, comments, or if there's a topic that you'd like me to cover in a future video, please don't be shy and hit me up in the comments section. Thank you very much and have a great day.